Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. All right, guys. So we didn't have a podcast this week because I've been so busy preparing my course. And today is currently Thursday, and it's 5:47 p.m. My course actually starts in just over an hour, and I've set the whole room up for it. And I had everything set up, had the equipment set up, the camera set up, and so I thought, why not just shoot an episode while I'm here? We wasn't even going to put out an episode this week, to be honest. Or we weren't going to put out an episode this week, but seeing as we have the equipment, adjust the volume a bit, all set up, I thought, why not have a little natter with the audience? And it's bugging me that everything's bent, but I'm just going to, hopefully to you guys it's not, because I'm going to adjust it in post, but that is very annoying for me. So yeah, I thought, rather than not putting out an episode, to have a little discussion with you guys and share my thoughts on a few things. And I don't think I've done this before, as in I've done this before. Actually, the last episode that I did, a solo episode, it got a lot of great feedback. Whereas the ones before have got bad feedback. So I don't know if I've matured as a person and got better, or if it just had some value because it was specifically about business and stuff like that. So I had a meeting a few days ago. It was very late. It was very dark, and I had put the kids to bed, and I met with the brother because he was traveling, and so he literally only had that availability. And so I found a coffee shop nearby that closed at 9:30, and we met at 8, and we arranged to meet at 8, and alhamdulillah, what was that? Alhamdulillah, we started a bit late, and we had about an hour chat, and it was really nice. And some of the things that we were talking about, I thought it would be cool to talk about on here with you guys, because I've never really expressed my opinion about the Muslim market or the Muslim pound. There's a few kind of titles that I suppose people give the industry, which sounds like a really dirty word when you bring it in with the word Muslim, because Islam is a perfect way of life, not an industry. But I think there's a positive way we can talk about it. And I suppose I've been reluctant to talk about it in the past because, well, I've just never thought about it, to be honest, about talking about it. But now I feel like it's relevant. And I'll explain why I think it's relevant. So anyway, this brother that I met was kind of just seeking some advice on a kind of business idea that he had and a podcast that he wanted to start. And so we were just kind of riffing, and I was talking to him about my opinions and my thoughts. And I thought, it was interesting because I just haven't spoken about that kind of stuff much in public. I think part of the reason is because I often will feel like imposter syndrome, like, who am I to speak about business? Who am I to speak about the creative world or the Muslim world? I'm not knowledgeable as a Muslim man, or knowledgeable enough, like a student of knowledge. I'm not experienced enough as a businessman, and therefore speaking on a big public platform as opposed to just my private discussions about business and stuff, I try and avoid, right? But yeah, I thought it'd be a cool topic because it was on my mind. We were speaking about it, and it was cool. It was a nice conversation, and like I said, I'm sat here with an hour until the course, everything's set up, so why not? Hey. So okay, so the Muslim market, the Muslim world. I mentioned just now that I think that there's a positive way we can talk about it without it sounding like you're monetizing Muslims, which is really important. And I think the positive way we can talk about it, and the intention that we can have, and the way we can kind of spin it so that we can actually do goodness with a discussion like this, is we can understand that there's mainstream products and services available for everyone. And some of those mainstream products and services, like, I don't know, Google, is applicable to the Muslim. So it's fine, we use Google, right? But I think that there's lots and lots of products and services that are not necessarily available, or not necessarily perfectly catered for the Muslim life, right? Which is fine. That's ID. Like, we know that. It's normal. But that doesn't mean that it should be necessarily be that case. That doesn't mean that we can't create an alternative. And so I think that because we are Muslim, we have a very specific way of life, and we have rules or guidelines, I should say, for every part of our life. I remember one teacher once saying that the Prophet ﷺ taught us how to answer the call of nature. So why would he not teach us how to give da'wah? Because he was talking about da'wah in that talk. But it's true, because what that goes to show is that we have been given guidelines for everything, and therefore we have a very specific way of life. And if that's the case, then I think that there's a gap in most industries to apply or to create a business for the Muslim consumer, not just to monetize, right? And I want to make that clear, because when you're speaking about the Muslim market or the Muslim pound, it is very easy to say, oh, Faisal's talking about the Muslim pound like he's trying to monetize Islam, and I don't want it to go down that path. So that's the last disclaimer I'm going to give on that. Otherwise, I'm going to keep saying that. I hope that through the 200 plus episodes of Fresh Uganda we've done, that I've been sincere, and that comes across. So I won't mention that again. But I think really what it is, and the reason I initially had this thought is because so I was doing this podcast course. I was putting out this podcast course, and podcasting, as you know, is applicable to everybody, Muslim, non-Muslim, just anyone who wants to start a podcast. And so I was thinking, I can create a generic podcast course here, and it can be applicable to loads of people, and people can. There's no need to make it specific to Islam, right? And then I thought, but there are specific things, even in podcasting, that we have to be careful as a Muslim. And nobody creates content like that for those people. And that's important. Because if we just look at podcasting, for example, right? We know that the tongue is one of the big things that will lead us to the hellfire. And podcasting, the whole job is about the tongue. We know that there's certain deals or sponsorships or partnerships that are quite frequent in the podcasting world that is not appropriate for a Muslim. So how does a Muslim navigate those things? We know that in the creative world generally, there's a lot of income that can be made that's not necessarily pure. So how do we tackle those things? And in my 5 years of podcasting, we've had these questions, and we've had to go to people of knowledge and try and navigate through them. And I'm not saying I have the answers, but what I do know is that if I created a course specific to podcasting for Muslims, then 99% of the content would be applicable to everybody. But I could add an element that could help Muslims. And that element is, like, for example, where we have Tim Humble speaking on the monetization element of the course about how to earn money in a clean way and stuff like that. So that's where the thought sparked from, right? And then I realized that there's been a pattern in Freshly Grounded for years. And I finally was able to, I suppose, win the battle. And that's that Freshly Grounded clearly has a majority Muslim audience. It 99.9%. And all bar, 3 of our guests have been Muslim. 3 or 4. Yet, in some ways, we ran away from being directly, I suppose, a Muslim platform. We wouldn't necessarily mention that anywhere. And I suppose now I'm coming to terms with the fact that maybe it's to do with the fact that can have connotations because Muslims have not been the best at branding and stuff like that. And so that could have connotations that, I suppose, I don't know, it could be that you're restricting your audience as if non-Muslims, or that many non-Muslims are going to watch Fresh Uganda. Do you know what I mean? It's clearly a Muslim podcast. But I think we were lying to ourselves because, like I said, 99.9% of our audience, if not more, is Muslim. And so to not directly speak to the Muslims, or to even make a podcast like this, which I wouldn't have done even a year ago, is weird. There's no need to. It's not being embarrassed about your faith, but I guess it's you're trying to maybe prove to yourself that you can be applicable to everybody. But then I've realized that it's actually empowering that you can provide something to the Muslim community that is catered to them, and there's not enough businesses doing that. So what I realized is I think actually, to flip it on its head, that more Muslims need to create more businesses that are catered for Muslims. And I think it works on every angle. I think it works from the angle of you're able to empower Muslims and empower them to give them products that are specific to them. I'll give you another example, right? There's a podcast that I listen to called the Dave Ramsey Show. It's amazing. It's great for money saving tips and helping with how to save, how to he talks about how to invest, which again I don't take from him on that, because his investment techniques are often like to do with riba and buying into property and stuff like that. But for saving, for managing money, for knowing how to spend, it's amazing. But there's a lot. I have to always take the good and ignore the bad, and that's something that we as Muslims have to do with everything. But imagine if somebody created a Muslim version of that. And you don't have to make it Islamic. Freshly Grounded is not Islamic, but it takes into consideration the Muslims. So we might not swear, or we might not go down paths that aren't appropriate, or we try not to. And if somebody created the Muslim version of the Dave Ramsey Show, it doesn't mean you have to talk about zakat and sadaqah and etc. But it means that you won't talk about getting a loan, an interest-based loan. And that's important. And I think that if we had more content and more businesses that cater towards the Muslims, I think it would be, like I said, empowering for the Muslim consumer. The second thing is I don't think that would affect a person's bank account negatively. Like, okay, what I mean by that is that a person may have a business idea and say, I'm going to make this generic as opposed to specifically for Muslims. And the reason I'm making it generic is because I can't see it being lucrative if I was to make it just for Muslims. But other than that, I would love to make it specifically for Muslims, because I could empower Muslims. I could create content and business and services for them that has them in mind. And my argument to that is that there is enough scope, and through various kind of data and papers that exist online, that the Muslim pound, I think it was worth like 20 billion like in 2020, and Muslim Islam is obviously the fastest growing religion. In London, like thousands of business owners are Muslim. So there's loads of Muslim businesses. Muslims generally are quite entrepreneurial, you'd find, and so on and so forth. So there's wealth in those sectors. And so Muslim consumers do have money to spend, and they are after services that are specific for them. And because that doesn't necessarily exist, they do often have to go to, like us, we often have to go to loads of different businesses and services and take from them what we can and ignore from them, what we're unable to. And you'd find that in finance it exists a lot, weirdly, because finance is like the trickiest, in my eyes, part of Islam, like understanding, because finance is, and I'm no expert on Islamic finance, but finance is not just about, does this have interest or not? But it's like, is the contract an Islamically viable contract? Is there risk being taken on both ends? It's so specific that's like the hardest sector, and there's so many Islamic finance kind of businesses, right? But there's scope for that in every industry, I guess is what I'm saying. And I think now is the best time more than ever. My literature is so bad, isn't it? Let me get some water. Do you guys get where I'm coming from with this? So I suppose to round up what I just said in the first 15 minutes is, Muslims have a very specific way of life. However, they have to access generic goods and services because they are also human, and they live all over the world. But in order to access those goods and services, they often have to use their own wisdom to adapt it to their way of life. Finance is an easy example, but I don't want to talk about finance too much because it's too easy of an example to give, and also it's quite a sticky subject. But another example could be, let's think of a service, an obvious service. Like a supermarket, right? Like a supermarket caters towards Muslims, like it wouldn't necessarily have alcohol and stuff like that. But I can appreciate that a service like that, like there's perhaps no need for it. I can appreciate that. I'm not saying that like let's now like create something to like, go up against Waitrose. I understand that. Bismillah. But I do think there is scope. I think one of the things that deters great Muslim creatives and great Muslim thinkers and businessmen is that they believe that I think that they either believe that it's not going to earn them a living, or they'll feel guilty because they're monetizing something that's helping Muslims, or thirdly, they might feel burnt by the Muslim community. That's a big one, because unfortunately, some of us have experienced in our communities that, it's easier to go to other communities because they won't haggle on the price, or brother, can you do this, and so on and so forth, right? So I think they're the three reasons why, and I think that there's a solution to those three reasons. So I'm going to write those three reasons down, otherwise I'm going to forget. Right? I've got to keep an eye on the time because I've got to teach my course soon, but I'm interested to know your guys' thoughts as well. If you think I'm like completely wrong, I might be. All right. So what did I say? I said the three reasons why perhaps they don't is because, I said guilty because obviously you're providing service to the Muslim community, which is an amazing thing, and like why would you monetize it? Okay. 2, that there's no money in it, and 3, bad experience. And I think I have the solution. I think if you want to create a business that helps Muslims, and you fall into one of these categories, 3 categories as to why you don't, I think I might have the solution, right? Okay, so let's talk about guilt, first of all. Well, guilt's an easy one, right? You have to earn money and earn a living. At the same time, imagine if you're helping millions of Muslims around the world through your service, and keeping them away from haram, or even encouraging goodness, right? Example, let's say you have a service where you own a gym that is that doesn't, for example, play music, or that that there's like women's only sections and stuff like that. Now you're not benefiting from, you're not monetizing Islam there. What you are doing is you're creating a service for Muslims that allows them to, the alternative is to go to a gym like many of us do that has music blasting and all of that kind of stuff. So you're creating a service that hopefully will get you ajr on the Day of Judgment. But that service requires so much effort and time that it's okay to charge for a gym membership. I might be speaking out of line here. I'm just thinking because I have to be very cautious when I speak about Islam, because I also don't have like knowledge like an ustad. So saying like wide, loose terms like it's okay to charge Muslims and stuff. Okay, anyway. I'm happy to accept that I might be wrong here, by the way, guys, on these things, and I'm happy for you to pull me up on it. Because I'm learning and I'm kind of just speaking out my thoughts. But I think that ticks the box of guilt, right? You've created a gym that has actually helped Muslims, and you shouldn't feel guilty that you're charging for membership for the gym, because in order for a business to survive, you have to make money, and in order for you to earn a living, but also you could then provide more jobs for more Muslims if you're making good money off of that. Obviously, there's rules and regulations, right? But that's also one of the other beautiful things about starting a business as a Muslim. The more services that you provide as a Muslim, the more like, we're not allowed to lie. We're not allowed to cheat. We're not allowed to, like, if we were perfect Muslims, right? These businesses would be great because we'd be giving fair jobs. We'd be giving fair salaries. We'd be paying well. We'd be paying on time. So actually, we'd be like contributing amazingly to the economy if we were perfect Muslims, right? So I think that has ticked that box. The sad thing is that this is not a two-way conversation, because that would have helped, because I feel like I need to be questioning these things because nobody's playing devil's advocate with me. Okay, the second thing I said was no money, right? And I think we tackled that already. Like, there is money. Actually, no. Let's tackle these two together, because I think there's something that we can talk about here that I don't think is spoken about often. So no money and bad experience, right? As in, like, bad previous experience. I think we could talk about both of those in one, right? And I think that I really do believe this. Okay. So this is a concept that's not mine, right? As in, like, I was speaking to my brother about. Okay, to give you full context, we had a partnership conversation as Freshly Grounded with a really, really big, like, one of the biggest consumer brands in the world. We didn't end up getting the partnership, right? So we just happened to, like, manage to get in touch with them, and then they were, like, open to a meeting, and then, like, we didn't get the deal because, like, they're so big. It's like, okay, to give you an idea, it's like the Coca-Cola of the world. Like, there's only like 2 or 3 businesses that are, you know, we end up getting in touch with them. I mean, we end up having a meeting with them. Nothing came of it because obviously we're just a small, like, podcast. We was in over our heads trying to get. We were just shocked that they actually, like, replied to us, right? So anyway, in doing that, right, Bismillah. I spoke to Omar. I said, man, I've got a meeting with these guys. I have no idea what to say. Like, obviously, like, we're in over our heads here. I often go to Omar for business advice because I don't think people appreciate enough how amazing of a businessman he is and his achievements, and he is like very much overshadowed. But anyway, that's a story for another day. So I said to him, I don't know how to navigate this now. And he said, well, so this brand is... they create consumer products that people can use in their homes and stuff like that. I just don't want to say the actual business because obviously, like, it was a private meeting, but I don't know, you can anything that you can think of in your house that you use as a consumer product. Fairy liquid, I don't know, right? So so what he said is something really profound, and it was a concept of something that has now been coined in this office as the new Muslim household. And I spoke to this guy who I had the meeting with about this. And so what is the new Muslim household? Well, the new Muslim household is a concept that basically means that right now, as we speak, right, there's this generation is forming what's known as the new Muslim house. Was not known as it. We called it. Sorry, that's the most embarrassing thing I've ever done on camera. I actually just burped, and that's incredibly embarrassing. I really apologize because this is going out unedited, so I can't even fix that. I really apologize. Okay. Fine. So, right now, our generation, us, yeah, you guys listening, me, we are a group of, let's say, 20/30 something year olds, yeah, for the most part. Our key audience for Freshly Grounded is 25 to 34 year olds. So let's say we're all in our 20s and 30s. For the most part, our parents either came from back home. I appreciate that this doesn't necessarily apply to all of our listeners, because a lot of our listeners are from, like, different places all around the world. England being one of them, lots of reverts. So now I am getting a bit... Oh, my ear's ringing. I'm getting a bit specific to, like, born Muslims whose parents have come from another country. So I do apologize. But let's just work with me here on this, right? A lot of us... so I'll use me as an example. My parents came here from Pakistan, okay? Mine didn't. As in my dad did, but my mum didn't. So, but it's fine, because what I'm saying is that either our parents came from, let's say, Pakistan. For argument's sake, right now, everyone listening to this podcast, you're Pakistani, okay? So your parents either came from Pakistan or their parents came from Pakistan. I think that categorizes a lot of people who are first generation, or I don't know what it's called, second generation, third generation, I don't know. Anyway, I think that categorizes a lot of people, right? Either our parents came from Pakistan, fill in the blanks, Bangladesh, India, Gambia, wherever, right? But either our parents came from Pakistan or their parents came from Pakistan. Let's even say their parents came from Pakistan, right? Because I think that's the majority of us. So let's even say their parents came from Pakistan, because that's like us, like saying like the widest case scenario. So let's say my granddad came from Pakistan. He's come with all of his Pakistani traditions and cultures, some of which are beautiful, a lot of which are beautiful and amazing. And he's then raised children in England with that mindset, right? So raised children with that mindset. So those children were raised in very Pakistani households, almost as if they were living in Pakistan. Those people were our parents. Now they raised us, but we were born here, and our parents had been here now for around 25 years, 20 years, call it. So now we and our parents are from the UK, for example, right? So now there's quite a disconnect between us and our grandparents in terms of how we live our lives, right? We haven't been brought up necessarily as cultural. I'm going about this in such a long way. You guys are probably falling asleep already. So that means that this generation now, our generation, the generation that is us, we, for the first time ever in a generation, are establishing the new Muslim household, right? Because why? Because for example, we're getting married to who we want to marry, as opposed to like arranged marriages. Again, I accept that I'm major generalizations here, and I might get in trouble for that, but work with me here, right? We're getting married for the most part to who we want to marry, right? On top of that, we're finding Islam despite culture, right? So a lot of us are finding Islam in this generation without the culture, and then we're able to implement the beautiful parts of our culture that work with Islam into our Islam. I don't know if that makes sense, but we're finding, let's say, for example, a less cultured Islam, like just purer Islam. It's easier for us to differentiate what's like from Islam and what's not, right? So whereas I think in the past it's harder to differentiate. Like if our parents were strict, maybe they would claim that everything that they're being strict on is from Islam, but maybe some of it wasn't. Does that make sense? And I'm not blaming them, by the way, because they had it hard. Like the hardest generation was the generation who had to come here like with nothing. And my granddad, he had it hard. May Allah bless him and honor him and grant him Jannah. He's no longer here, but me and him, my granddad, were best friends. May Allah honor him. Grant him Jannah. Okay, so here, work with me here, right? So we're getting married to who we want to marry, rather than our parents like deciding, for the most part. We're finding Islam kind of like young people are like starting to practice more and stuff like that. And we're moving out when we're getting married, because it's no longer, because back in the day the norm was like everyone lives in one household, but now like we're kind of getting more into like getting our own places and stuff like that, renting, etc. And so what's happening is a new Muslim household is being formed that has no precedent. That's the key. There's no precedent. In the last generation, there was a lot of precedent because our parents were either living with their parents, or they still had very cultural upbringing. Their parents, so our grandparents, they were literally raised in, like, for example, Pakistan. And so we are the first generation that are born here fully. Our friends were all born here. We studied here. We graduated here. And now I appreciate that I'm speaking from a place of like a place of what is it, like prestige, or like luxury? What is it called? Like, I appreciate that I'm speaking from a place of a place of prestige, but I'm speaking here to, like, you know, the people that I see day to day, right? Like, people generally in, like, London, Birmingham, Manchester, stuff like that. And I appreciate that. You guys know what I'm trying to say here. So the end result is for the first time ever, there's a new Muslim household forming. We're having kids right now, between 20 and 30-year-olds right now are getting their first homes. They're having their first children. They're experiencing marriage for the first time, and they don't have a lot of precedent, or as much precedent, and so the new Muslim household is being formed. And in this new Muslim household, so for that new Muslim household, there's opportunities for us to make services that cater to the new Muslim household. Oh man, I'm so not articulate. Does that make any sense? But that is a once in a lifetime opportunity, because our children and their children and their children and their children and their children will have precedent, unless a new world comes and we all move to Mars. But before our parents' generation, their generation, it wasn't that common for, like, people to mass move to another country or, like, another part of the world. Now, I am also missing out on, like, I'm very ignorant to, like, I suppose, like, colonialism and stuff, and I'm sure, like, a lot of historic things have had an impact on that. So maybe I should speak to, like, a historian before releasing this. But do you guys get where I'm coming from? What was my point? Okay, let's go back to no money and bad experience, because they were the other two things. So we said guilty, no money, and bad experience, right? Don't need to feel guilty because you're providing, for example, a gym to Muslims. That's amazing. And you have to earn. And if we're perfect Muslims, you're not charging a stupid amount, you're charging a reasonable amount. And everything is just and fair. And you're employing people like that. No money, that has been defeated now by the new Muslim household. Because we're talking specifically about, like, the same people who use social media and buy an Apple Watch and etc. 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 No money is defeated by it, because the new Muslim household, there's Muslims are going into jobs of tech, into development, into they're graduating as doctors, and which obviously there were before. But okay, we're on a level playing field with our counterparts. Whereas before, when my granddad came here, he was playing catch up with other people who were already in the economy, because he had to learn the language, he had to get himself educated, and then he could start earning money. We have been educated at the same time as other people our age in where we live, right? So we have just as much chance, for example, as getting that job in Google as a developer as our counterparts. And then thirdly, bad experience-wise, that's going to be fizzled out, because now with this new Muslim household, you're seeing that, I don't think it's fair to say that people had bad experiences. I think, like, when people saw people in their community, they felt that they could trust and rely on them. And I think now, I don't think the trust and the reliance has gone, but I think now everybody is, again, on level playing field with understanding the unspoken rules of goods and services. Man, I don't know if I want to put this episode out, because I don't know if what I'm saying in my brain is coming out or if it's just sounding obnoxious. Do you know what I mean? I said a few episodes ago on a podcast, as Muslims, we should be giving zakat, we should be giving sadaqah, we should treat our workers fairly, we should pay people fairly, we should encourage all of the Islamic rulings, we should encourage prayer in the workplace, we should, you know, allow people to have Ramadan, like take it easy and stuff, and so on and so forth. And so I guess my point is that there's opportunity for Muslims to own and run businesses and be successful, and so much good can come from it. But also the good can come from who your end user is. You can create businesses that cater towards Muslims and help Muslims. And I think there's some prejudices with that. And I think one of them is that like you fear that like you might come across tacky or you're losing opportunities, but I just don't think that's the case anymore. Like look at great apps like Pillars and stuff like that. Like the branding is amazing. Look at Kilburn Islamic Center, the mosque. Like branding amazing. Like we're no longer where 10 years ago we would do things a bit tacky. I don't know what I'm trying to say and get out, man. And I always get this anxiety that my words are gonna like come out of context, or like it doesn't sound like what I mean. And like this episode calls to my anxiety because it's like, do you know what I mean? I just think there's so many talented, amazing Muslims out there, and you see them every day, and I see them on this podcast, and some of the ones that have inspired me the most, like Danjuma, Arnaut Danjuma, right? He's not shy of his faith in any way, shape, or form, and that's inspiring. And I don't know, should like support each other more and feel like more of a community and help each other. And that doesn't mean take each other for a mug and like not pay for the services that we need, but just like, you know, create services that help. I don't know what I'm saying, man. I don't know. I think I created this. I have too much time on my hands today, clearly. I was just trying to like navigate through my thoughts. And the overriding thing is there's no need to be fearful of, like, now's a great time to access the Muslim market. And yes, if people want to capitalize off that, and just make money, they could. And that is bad because you're capitalizing off of, you know, a trajectory. I guess that's bad, right? But or we could see that trajectory and go, let's create products and services that help and support Muslims. And actually, Pillars are the perfect example of that, because somebody did capitalize. I don't know the full story behind that app that like sold data and stuff. I don't know the full story behind it. But what I know is, from what I know is that it was not owned. Was it not owned by Muslims? If that is the case, and somebody capitalized off it, and why not? And then look what Pillars doing. Amazing job, amazing branding. Like, I don't know, man. Guys, it's 6:30 and my podcast course is in half an hour, so I need to go and prepare for that. And I am maybe going to put this out now, or I'm maybe going to think about it. But it was just a rant, I guess. So that's this week's episode of Fresh and Grounded, and I will see you next week with hopefully a guest. Oh, next week's our live event as well. So, all right, guys. See you soon. Assalamu alaikum.